Hey, what's up everybody? We're back to go ahead and do a reassembly on this iPhone 6s Plus. I'm just going to put this out there. This is not my best reassembly video. My head gets in the way a lot, so I did a little bit of editing. But I'll try to do my best to narrate what we're doing as we go. We're going to go ahead and put the cable back in. And it's always easy to put the 3.5mm headphone jack portion in first. It's a little bit tricky to get lined up and in properly. So usually I start with that. Using my spudger here to kind of get everything to line up a little bit. So it kind of gets snagged up on the battery. You kind of have to wiggle it in just a little bit to get it to fit. The next step is to make sure that the microphones are attached. There's actually two of them, one on either side of the charge port. So make sure the left microphone's in, push the charge port in, and then just kind of line up the microphone on the right. And they should still have some adhesive on them. If you're using a new cable, it should still have the adhesive from underneath the sticker backing you removed. So you may have to line up a little bit. There's usually a little post down here that you can put it onto that's going to hold it in place with the adhesive and line everything up properly. So you don't have to worry about things not being where they should be. And as long as your ribbon cable lines up on top of the screw holes, you can also make sure that's lined up properly as well. There's a little bit of adhesive down here that's kind of blocking that screw hole, which I'm just moving. So we're just going to try to put this cable back down and see if it's going to stick for us. And it's not the end of the world if it's not extremely sticky. The loudspeaker will hold this in place as well as the remaining screws we're going to put in as well. Alright, the first screw we're going to put in is actually going to be right next to the microphone. It's the one of the two that's actually facing inwards towards the bottom of the phone. They're kind of a pain to get back in, and I actually accidentally did this off camera, but it's just right here, and we're just going to screw it right back in. Make sure it's nice and snug. This one right here. So now that'll hold this portion back in. We can go ahead and put the screw in the upper left headphone jack portion. And then we can put our taptic feedback sensor and snap our ribbon cable back in place. Now with that in place, we can go ahead and put the two screws that are holding that down in next. There's our first screw. Second screw is going to go down here in the charge port area. And you'll also notice that the rubber grommet of the Taptic engine actually holds the microphone in place as well. You're also going to want to put in the screw to the right of the charge port. You can see it's already installed. I actually had my head in the way when I was putting that in. So just make sure you put that screw in, and then we'll also put a screw in on the right side where the adhesive we pulled up was at. So we'll put this right back in, and we'll use a pair of tweezers to pull the adhesive back over it. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and put the screw in that holds the ribbon cable in place. So we'll go ahead and put this screw in just in the base of the phone. And that'll secure the ribbon cable back down. Alright, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is just try to get this ribbon cable to lie as flat as possible. So when we put the loudspeaker back in, we won't have to fight with it too much. We're just going to make sure that the screw hole is lined up properly. Possibly use a spudger to help kind of push everything back in place if you need to. So we're just going to try to move these wire connectors out of the way a little bit. And see if we can't put it back down the side of the logic board here with our spudger. And you'll see that I had adhesive on it beforehand that was holding it to the top of the loudspeaker. I mean, it's not extremely necessary that you have to put all that back together. We're just going to try to guide these cables in right to the top of the loudspeaker before we put it in. And use our spudger to line everything up. Just make sure all the screw holes are back in place. Sorry, my head's getting in the way again. It's probably one of the trickier charge port replacements that I've done. I'm just trying to make sure I put everything back in the way it should be. So now we have everything lined up. We're going to go ahead and put the screw in This will pull the loudspeaker down towards the base of the phone and line up that microphone at the bottom. So now what we can do is just, you can see these cables didn't want to sit in for us. So we're going to use our spudger and basically just push them back into where they need to go. So this first cable here at the top, that needs to go in between the logic board and the loudspeaker. And just try not to have this adhesive taping out the top. Just kind of try to push it down in between the loudspeaker and the logic board itself. That way it won't interfere with the cable when we reattach it. Just going to try to pull this cable just a little bit. It looks like it's a little bit shorter than it was when I first put it in. So I'm just going to see if we can't get a little bit of length on the cable just by pushing it with the spudger lightly. We'll go ahead and reattach the wire connection right below the battery connector onto the logic board of the second cable that was there. Now we will grab the connector, the little metal bracket that holds those two cables in place. Just use a pair of tweezers to try to put that over the top of the cables and then back onto the loudspeaker. Now it goes with the arrow portion towards the top. So we'll see if we can't line this up on top of the two cables and just kind of try to wiggle it back into place. It seemed like the easiest method for me to do this. Now once we have it right where we want it to be, we can go ahead and put this screw back in, holding these two cables in place. Perfect. Now that's one of the trickiest parts I thought that would happen. It actually was a little bit easier to complete than I had thought. Next thing to do is just run those cables down the guide side of the loudspeaker, which is what I'm doing right now. We don't want them to kind of flop around anywhere, so just try to get them down that side of the loudspeaker where they initially were. The next step is to go ahead and take that wire connector and reconnect it to the logic board. So I'm just trying to push these cables around where I want them to be, have them line up properly everywhere. So putting that wire connector right back onto the logic board down here. Now one thing that's a little bit tricky and you may want to pay attention to is the wire connector I just attached might be better off to the left side of the bracket connector. Instead of going over it, it may be easier just to go under it. Not the end of the world. We'll just need to make sure we have a little extra length on the cable. So we'll just have to pull it just a little bit to get it to fit and line up with the screw holes. So just pushing that first cable into its guide slot a little bit further so we can get a little more length on that bracket cable. Perfect, there we go. Let's use the tape to kind of hold that in place. And we can put the other bracket on top that was covering the Taptic engine ribbon cable. And we're going to go ahead and put these screws back in place. We'll go ahead and start on the left-hand side and just kind of work our way across. It's a second one for that new bracket we just put on. And we'll just line up the bracket underneath this one for the wire cable connector. We have 3 screws to put in here. Last one down here at the bottom. Now we can go ahead and put the screws back in for the loudspeaker, the remaining ones. So this one here in the upper corner of the bracket. Down here at the bottom right side. In the top corner. Now what I'm going to do is just try to take a look at this. There's a bit of adhesive around this cable connector. So I'm going to try to pull it up just back a little bit with my spudger just to make sure we don't have any problems reattaching the charge port cable. So if you can't get this snap back in place. Make sure you press on both sides of the cable to make sure it's fully attached. You can go ahead and click in the battery connection cable as well. A lot of people will say wait until your screen's attached, but I find better luck with the front-facing camera if the battery's already attached when you put everything back together. Now we can take our screen and go ahead and put the connectors back in as well. We have the 3 ribbon cables here at the top. We'll go ahead and reattach those 3 ribbon cables. Using the exact same method we did with the charge port, just making sure we get these nice and snug in. We want to make sure that we don't push too hard to damage the connection if it's not centered correctly, but hard if it'll snap back in place. And once you know they're all connected, give them a good push to make sure they're fully connected. So you might get things like gray lines or have issues with the front-facing camera not working if these cables aren't connected properly. Now we can go ahead and take our emitter shield and put it back on top. We have a total of 5 screws that will be going back into this section. Put the right side screw in first. We'll go ahead and put the remaining 4 screws in. Center screw next. Now that that's completed, we can go ahead and put the battery bracket back in place, and that'll take 2 screws as well. Now with those 2 screws on, we can go ahead and take the front display. We're going to pull it down a little bit and just push it in towards the top to make sure that it fits back in properly. Then we're going to squeeze down on the sides, working our way down on each side, and then working our way back down to make sure it's connected properly. We don't want to push too hard at the bottom without the top being in, so we don't want to damage the display. The next step is to go ahead and put in the 2 screws at the bottom of the phone. Now at this point you can go ahead and test the charge port, make sure the phone's going to power on, the display is going to work before you put everything back together. But at this point I can tell you right now it's going to work properly for us. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw those down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button. I would appreciate that. If you want to see future repair videos, go ahead and subscribe to me. I try to pop out a couple a month. And as always, I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.